Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Dockside at the Bay. I am Vinny, as always, here with Kim, and I am coming to you from a brand new studio that I'm still in the middle of organizing. So bear with the lighting, and while I get everything squared away, and sometimes the lighting just isn't perfect. But anyways, Kim, how are you today?
Doing all right. Just a typical kind of Tuesday night here in Chicago. Looking forward to diving into this episode though, because I don't know, today at work was kind of stressful. It was nice being able to just know that I could come and just, get home and chat about, a show and escape into that a little bit, escape from the office, so to speak.
Fantastic. And I agree with you. Although, seeing that you're from Chicago, the Cubs were kind of on the shit list of every soap opera fan, especially General Hospital fan last week, as the Cubs wild card game preempted GH for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah, I noticed that. I have to say, even being a Chicago transplant, I am still kind of a Yankees fan at heart.
Okay,
So.
well, hey, that's good. I'm a Yankees fan too, so I'm okay with
yeah.
that.
No, I did. Those preemptions though. It's nice not having to deal with that with the Bay. I will say that much,
yes.
Because when we get interrupted, especially with Beyond the Gates and everything too, when I missing out for like a solid chunk of episodes, it's just you get disappointed. You want to be able to escape into your stories. So sorry for the Cubs interruption.
The good thing for General Hospital fans, Nathan Varney, the executive over at ABC, did say that this is the last year of the contract with MLB and ESPN to do the day games,
really?
at least on ABC. So this is the last year we have to worry about it going forward, and it is not being renewed. Nathan Varney, who is the programming director at ABC, said they will not be renewing that contract.
Well, learn something every day.
And it kind of makes sense, especially with ESPN's new unlimited direct-to-consumer streaming platform. They're probably going to put everything on there as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I could see that playing out. So, interesting stuff.
Very. But you guys aren't here to listen about General Hospital or baseball or ESPN or any of that. You're here to talk about the Bay. But I do want to address something. If you follow our social media, which you should, at Suds Media, which is our network Twitter account, you should be following us, number one. But number two, I did put out a tweet last week. As of this past Saturday, Suds and Squared Circle Media is no longer affiliated with the Chairshot Media Group. We were with them for a year, and it's been great. We grew our subscription base. We got a lot of new podcasting friends, and it was absolutely fantastic for the time that we were associated with that group. However, we've decided to no longer be affiliated with that network. And now, don't worry, Suds News is not going anywhere. Dockside at the Bay is not going anywhere. There's going to be more programming. I'm going to be doing more programming myself on our network. And we are now affiliated with the Gimmick Table Media, which is, a media group of the ashes of Chair Shop, but with the fact of now we're doing more genres of entertainment. There is a tarot card, daily reader that's on there. There's a lot of wrestling. We've got this. We're covering the soap operas, and it's just a lot of podcasters coming to support. With that said, normally you would watch Dockside at the Bay on 8 different streaming platforms. You would watch it on our YouTube. You would watch it on Kim's YouTube. You would watch it on Angela's YouTube, on our Twitter account, on my Facebook account, Angela's Facebook account, Chairshot Sports Twitter account, as well as my LinkedIn. However, with the change, we are now streaming only to 3 platforms, which will be the main 3, which will be our YouTube, our network YouTube, which is suds-media.com or youtube.com/@suds-media, either way you want to look at it. Also, our Twitter, which is @Suds Media, and then Kim's YouTube, which is a Little Misfit 52. So that's where you're going to find it, only there. But you will be able to still find the shorts and the teaser trailers and everything over on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and Threads and everywhere else, and YouTube as well. But go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on those notification bells. We want to thank the 272 subscribers that are now subscribed to
Yes, thank
the
you.
Squared Circle Media YouTube network. Ever closer to 500. That's when we get monetized through YouTube. So help us out, share, like, and keep those subscriptions coming. Anyways, we've got quite an episode to talk about of
Oh
Dockside,
yeah.
and I got to tell you, this was a hard one for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It was this episode, it's kind of like the peak of it in the intensity that we've been talking about for this past season of
Yep.
the Bay. Just in terms of all the storylines kind of coming to a head, it definitely takes on just a tone that as we've been saying, it sparks. There's a lot of between the COVID arc that they have play out here, as well as the BLM and the protest type arc as well. It's just there is a lot of just emotional beats that this episode hits, and it's very intense in some parts.
Yes.
But it's a little difficult in terms of the escaping to do with this episode, just in my opinion. But I know too that the way that they handle, this even like this intense sort of, moment in these storylines, I feel like they do a very good job. But it does, yeah, it does hit. It does hit pretty hard, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. And you know what? We're going to be watching. We're going to be talking about season 6, episode number 8, which is a pitched battle. Again, you can find it on Peacock. You can find it on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Tubi and Popstar and Roku channel now, we're and Amazon Prime. I think I might have said that. Many places you can find the Bay.
Yeah.
But I prefer to watch it on Peacock right now. Who knows? After this season, where I'll mosey on off to. But yeah, and here's the thing. I have to say, this is probably not only the most, the peak of intensity of the season for the Bay, but also the peak of intensity that we saw in real life during the 2020-2021 year, time frame, during the height of COVID, during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Definitely.
And, it's definitely one of the most divisive times in our history. And I applaud, the Bay for going there. I just feel like, and I do feel like the characters worked through everything and worked through all the controversy and kind of brought a good dialogue to both sides of everything.
Agreed. And in terms too, I mean, they do manage to all the storylines that they've been building, they do kind of all sort of like twine together. We do
Yep.
see, we get sort of just everything just kind of comes in like this sort of and to have it the montage feature as well. Just
Yes.
kind of to have that kind of cap everything off, and then to like end the episode on a pretty distinct sort of twist as well, establishing with involving Pete and Adam and that bringing that story kind of front and center again, just kind of refocusing. It was a very packed episode, a lot of intensity, a lot of emotion, but they do manage to just kind of twine everything in such a way that it was very compelling, but yeah, difficult to watch, difficult to sit through, especially in certain parts, particularly the COVID stuff for me. It was, just the hospital sequences. I mean, they really did a good job of just representing that entire scary, everything that was, all the emotions that we were feeling and everything. They managed to flesh that out with these characters and make us feel, they're experiencing what we, all were experiencing in that era, and it's difficult to watch. I don't disagree with that, but they do a really good job of just portraying all of that and bringing it back to like the surface.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I do, like I was never one to support. I don't want to say support because it sounds so wrong. But when it came to like the Black Lives Matter movement, I never I never agreed with it because to me it felt like it was more divisive than uniting, for our culture, for our country, and watching it play out through the character of RJ,
Hmm.
it does help the viewers, no matter what your race or background is, see both sides of everything and
His
see
scene with Avery in particular
right.
really, just drives that home for
It
sure.
does.
I
And
mean, I think that's one of the more intense sort of, it wasn't a monologue per se, but just the dialogue in that scene and everything that it was just so very stellar job between the two actors for
yes,
starters. But it felt like that scene, it was, I don't know, it's a very intense, powerful kind of thing, and they did do a good job of just kind of portraying, sides of both sides of the coin to a degree. We
yes,
hear perspectives, we hear, from both, and it's balanced. It's not as if we're just hearing someone preach. We're hearing, like, just a genuine kind of conversation, a dialogue about this very, intense moment in our, nation's history, everything like that, and hearing it from the perspective of these characters, two characters who love each other, who are close, but in this have just become, but then to have them kind of come to, after the big intense kind of, showdown that they do have that moment, which is a relief, and I'd kind of forgotten about, when, RJ kind of comes back to her and they just kind of regroup, and they just kind of look at each other and they're like, we still love each other,
yeah,
we're in each other's corner, we're going to support each other. It's just because you needed that after the intensity that they shared. You needed
yeah,
that just kind of, resolution, and we got to see that. And it just, the way that they strung that scene along, I just thought they did a really, really remarkable job. And the acting too, just
oh yeah.
across the board, just fantastic.
Um, and it's like through the RJ character, you're able to see, and through that entire scene and how he's talking about, people, people with his color skin, they've missed out on so much. They've been turned down for jobs and housing and X, Y, and Z, and they haven't had all these uh, opportunities to, whatever. Of
Hmm.
course, coming from somebody in the Northeast, coming from somebody who, you know, um, didn't see a lot of that because, I mean, the majority of our lives, at least, there has not been segregation. In
Hmm.
our generation, we went to school with black kids and Puerto Ricans and Asians and every other nationality. There was
Hmm.
never any um, blatant racism that we saw, whether we're whether we're white or not. Obviously, in the shoes of a black kid, they would have seen a lot different than
Hmm.
us. And we didn't see a lot of that because we were, the deep south. On the other hand, maybe there's a lot more blatant racism and a lot more stuff, but not up here in the Northeast. Um, and so I come back to say the way that RJ kind of expressed himself, and again, he pointed it out from his point of view, being in a school with preppy white kids and
Hmm.
all these rich white kids, and
Yep.
he's a he's a mixed race uh, child, a mixed race person because his mother's white and his father was black.
Yep.
So he had to deal with it from both sides. Um, and
Yeah.
I like how Avery said, "I'm not, I do support your movement. I just want you to be safe."
Because her primary concern in all of this from the jump has just been RJ. That's why she, lashes out at Colton so intensely, just because she sees her, her nephew, no,
Nephew.
cousin. Yep, nephew.
That,
Yep.
yeah, because I think Marley was Avery's sister. No, Marley was Pete's sister.
I gotta make
So,
that family tree, man.
yeah,
No, it sees a loved one
yes,
being just, in this situation, and knowing that she is, because he does say, RJ does have that one line, like, you can't understand no matter how woke you think you are. And that, jumps out at me, because it's just, you, he's absolutely right. No matter how tuned in you are and as much of an ally as you can be, you are coming from a place of, privilege as a white person.
yeah,
And you are not able to ever fully step into that, perspective and living with that sort of, just on a regular basis. It's not something that, we will ever experience, no matter how woke we think we are. So for him to just say that, and for her to just say she understands, I mean, over and over again, she just keeps on saying that she understands, and he just keeps on saying, as much as I know that you do, you really fully can't. And it's just, it's the truth. And, they're just putting the truth out there in, very intense dialogue between them. But you can see how deeply Avery is affected by this entire, all she wants to do is help him and protect him and make sure that he's safe. And she's concerned about the nature of the protest for obvious reasons, because you have it where you show Vivian getting knocked down, and you show her, RJ, all the, everything that's transpired. Of course, she's coming from this place of concern, but, RJ is thinking beyond that. He's thinking, we need to, be out there just showing this, because otherwise nothing will change. So we definitely saw both sides, but I appreciate, just like I said, the follow-up to the scene and being able to have that resolution between them. Because if they had left it off at a point where, like, he, kicks her out of his room, and he's just, I mean, it would have obviously extended the story out, but I think that it covered all the intensity that, it needed to. I think it hit that height, and then they knew, okay, now we need to just kind of regroup, bring them back together, and show that the love is still there, and that they can still, communicate on this, and they can still, we're still family, we're still here to support you. It's just having that kind of moment was just really, him saying, I heard you, and it meant a lot. And Avery being like, you can't ever push me away no matter what you do. It's just solidifying that family bond. It's like we needed that to kind of counteract everything that we were feeling from the previous moment that they had.
I would have loved to kind of see, and this is where my thought process goes. I would have loved to see Tony in these scenes with RJ.
I would have liked to have seen that too, actually. I made a note of that as well. Because maybe they couldn't get the actor back just because of, obviously, the restrictions and everything. But that would have been an interesting, having that father-son, because we've only been treated to a handful of scenes between the two of them as father and son. It would have been, that would have been a really nice kind of cap on all of this, or in between sort of moment between that and the kind of resolution he has with Avery, if like he had a chance to speak with his father, because he does have a really good dialogue with Pete, obviously, but Pete isn't his dad, and Pete also isn't black, and that would have been just a really, you're right, that's a scene I wish we could have had.
Because I would have liked for Tony to come in and almost play devil's advocate and be like, listen, I faced racism in my life. He's an older guy, obviously, and Sean Blakemore, the actor, being on GH, fantastic actor.
And but he's a black man too, who's like, risen to a point. I mean, he's a lawyer, he's successful.
And that's what I was getting at, is that he could show RJ and be like, listen, there are opportunities for us. We just have to be able to go out there and take them. Is it harder? Maybe, but RJ, the one problem that I see, and this is probably nitpicky on my part by looking at it, in that RJ is probably the wrong character to kind of play this story through. Now, granted, yes, he's a black man or mixed race, whatever you want to call it, but he was raised by the Garretts. He was raised with money. He was raised with privilege.
And we raised this point in the last episode. It would have been interesting to see Will kind of.
Yes.
Yes. Because we don't really know, Will and his background, his family life, his situation,
Yep.
and now he's like obviously still maybe at the Cleveland Clinic. We're not sure, but having his voice in this would have definitely been a really strong choice. I think.
I agree.
think if we could have had that actor back, or even if it had to be a different actor, because or maybe the restriction, we'll never know. But I agree, his voice would have been, having that perspective would have just been really valuable, I think, in this storyline for sure.
Right.
Especially to kind of counteract and go up against everything that we see from Colton, just kind of having that outside, it definitely would have been an interesting part of the narrative if he had been included.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's my point, in that RJ, while I'm sure that he's faced some type of discrimination or racism or whatever, he was raised by the Garretts.
Yeah. But I can appreciate, though, how with the RJ angle, they were able to have that conversation, which I thought was really also well done. And it was kind of a light touch on it, but they still touched on it when Sarah and Pete were talking about how, and Pete obviously has a baby on the way who is also going to be a mixed race.
Right.
And his coming from a place of concern for his future child. And Sarah coming from a place of, wishing that she could have done more, or stepped in, them being able to kind of say, as Garrett, we still have like our concerns because of where it did bring in that perspective, which I thought was really, that was, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more extension on some of those scenes, or that scene in particular with Sarah and with Pete. And especially just, with the baby on the way as well for Pete and for Vivian, even like kind of fleshing that out a little bit more, because all of those are interesting perspectives that they were able to bring in through RJ. But I agree too. Having Will in the mix would have just also added another layer that I think, would have been valuable.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. And I feel like that could have been, and again, we're playing devil's advocate. We're looking at it years after it was, shot.
True.
And it could have just been, they may
yeah.
not have been able
and with the way that, the production of the show and, having, X amount of actors on set and only being allotted certain, obviously there were restrictions still in place. Obviously there was, there were so many factors that we'll never know and we'll never fully grasp. But the fact that they did, make a really strong point of just but tackling this, just deciding we are going to take on this story and this, that what is happening we are going to bring this in. I mean, at the root of it all, that's what soaps, historically, we're always kind of in, especially early on, embracing that kind of social sort of, so to see the Bay do it in such a way that they did, it's really, it harkens back to an older soap narrative that we don't really see too much of anymore.
Exactly.
So I definitely kudos to, the team for just deciding, yep, you know what, we're going to put this kind of front and center because what's going on, even though the show, soaps, I always say soaps are an escape, but in this moment, they decided to rise to the occasion and really just, put these storylines front and center. And to that, I give them a lot of credit.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah, all right. Except I will say too, though, the COVID stuff and the hospital scenes so, and I mean, they just kept on ramping up the intensity with that. And it just obviously with Matthew, and even Matthew being sort of, not a secondary character, but it's like we really didn't give him too much kind of, especially after Caleb came into the mix. Yes. He was just kind of like, okay, yes, him and Daniel, but they really did make an effort with this. And obviously, because they were going to, the character was going to be, go off canvas and he was going to pass away and it was going to be a tragic sort of, they did really play up his and Daniel's relationship in a way that like it works, but it also just was like, I don't know, it was like, if we had seen more of that connection with them, well, then maybe we wouldn't have Caleb and Daniel, who I love. So, but it's just kind of interesting how they chose to really just, through the with the hat and with that whole, just him finding the hat and triggering all these memories and using that as a vehicle to kind of, flesh out that relationship. And then Caleb reminding everyone too that Daniel, Matthew was his first and everything. Yep. They really, but they chose this time to really heighten that character when he was kind of in a place of just, not an afterthought, but he wasn't exactly the most prominent until now.
Right.
But oof, did he go out in a big way, and just in a tragic
yes,
way, and everything about that was just. And Avery's breakdown too during the montage sequence.
Yes.
Like,
because Avery cared about Matthew. I mean, they were friends. They were colleagues.
Right. No, but even like watching those scenes again, I was just thinking, like, did they get award recognition for this? Because they really should have if they didn't. Like,
Agreed.
Yeah, like that just that just punch you in the heart.
So we do find out that throughout this whole thing, Orchid is talking to John Blackwell. They're in Turkey. It starts all over. It starts over in that neck of the woods. And she's like, "Where were you? I stalled as much as I could. He got away. And Blackwell is like, well, I was only a couple of minutes away. Don't blame me."
And then she goes, "Well, the man is batshit." She's just straight up. She's like, "Listen, I'm dealing with a sociopath here, friend. You really need to like be here." She isn't sure she can even do this, and like just is in such. You can tell that this isn't exactly as savvy as she is and street smart as she is. She is in over her head here, and she knows it. And for John Blackwell to just kind of not be dismissive of it, but just kind of be like, if I was Orchid, I'd just be like, oh my goodness, like what have I gotten myself into?
The way that she says, "I wake up every morning next to somebody who's batshit crazy," is just absolutely phenomenal. And if you're waking up next to somebody who's batshit crazy, we talk about it. I can recommend somebody for you.
Are you having problems in the bedroom? Are you having problems with your sex life? Well, I know just who to talk to, and that's Lori. CoachingByLori.com is where you could set up voice, video, or text sessions to talk about sex, to talk about intimacy, kinks, fetishes, taboos, fantasies, or your sexuality. You could talk about coming out and what to expect when you come out. Lori is a sex therapist and talks about your sexual health. Lori's offering all new clients 20% off their first session with the coupon code WELCOME. That's Coaching by Lori, LORIE.com. Coupon code WELCOME, WELCOME, for 20% off your first session.
All right. So as we move on to Orchid and Steve Jensen and their whole cat and mouse game, just that right after Orchid hangs up the phone, or John Blackwell hangs up the phone on her, and we kind of see the wide shot and Steve standing there behind him, just listening, just standing there observing.
And I will say this. Creep. Oh, what a creep. But the acting in that scene, you can tell that, between Matthew Ashford and Terry Ivins, phenomenally acted scene. You can tell these guys are just soap veterans. Because her reaction as she realizes that, and then his I thought you were my disciple. And then he's, yeah, you were Judas. Just everything about it was just like so soapy and intense and scary and such a good scene. Such a good scene, but also just, poor Orchid.
And then he's just like, pack your shit and get out.
Mm-hmm. And, she just collapses on the bed, just totally, she knows at that point she's out. She is in trouble.
But it seems to be a recurring theme this season, because we saw that with Tamara and Evan, and now we see it with Orchid and Steve.
Yeah. It's like these, I don't know. I was kind of hoping that, like, my girls, as savvy as they are, they were both in situations where they just got caught up and were in over their heads and came to really realize it in really kind of scary ways. Yeah, you don't want to tangle with these, and it's not as if, with Evan and Tamara, obviously different situation, but, being exposed and being just totally, just left vulnerable, get out. It's basically the same thing happening in two very different contexts.
Yeah. And so, that's really all we see of that whole scenario, is that just that opening that opening scene, and how Steve, kicks her out. Because then we move on to, Matthew finding, or I'm sorry, Daniel finding Matthew's hat while he's looking for his shoe.
Yeah. What happened to who steals one shoe? Someone, a one-legged man. I wonder if that was improvised. That just felt so funny to me. It felt like something that he could have just made up on the fly.
I love the Daniel character, and I know we talked about it that for a while he was just literally comic relief, and then they finally deepened the character. But he still has those quick one-liners that are absolutely fantastic in the moment.
Yeah, just like a perfect entrance. It just walked around, looking for a shoe. But then for it to kind of, go into like the very, and I admit, I wasn't as like Matthew and Daniel. Like I said, I mean, Caleb and Daniel are like my, one true couple on, this. But I have to say, seeing the flashes to him and Matthew, I mean, the chemistry is there. They do have a lovely rapport. They do have those scenes of them just kind of, running with the abs, making sure the abs aren't implants. They do have a chemistry, and we got to see it in this scene, and it just makes everything all the more poignant and all the more it makes you feel Daniel's pain so much more, just knowing that they shared that. Also, the denizens, I really wasn't sure what that was all. I was like, oh, okay, baseball hat, sports team. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Like I was kind of unfamiliar with that, up until watching this episode. I was unfamiliar with that particular team and that whole situation, but it's still, it was a touching, but knowing what's to come just makes it very bittersweet to watch.
And it's also the idea of the contrast of Daniel, who he's very happy with Caleb, but he still, he still holds Matthew in a very soft spot of his heart. I mean, he was, Matthew was the guy that helped Daniel come out to his family and come out in general, and just the idea that they were no longer together, they broke up, and Daniel and Caleb got together, and I know that Caleb was kind of struggling with, their Matthew and Daniel's friendship, and. And then all of a sudden Caleb wants to propose to Daniel, and now he has to comfort him because
and talk about just that just being like just a knife to the gut moment when he's ready to have that beautiful kind of moment with the man he wants to marry, and then it just it was so devastating.
Yes.
But I will say I did Avery with Avery even like getting a chance to see the ring and all of that too, though, having that little moment with Caleb I thought was very sweet.
Well, I kind of took it a different way. I almost took it as she was like, you really think he's going to accept your proposal this quickly? And and
it's just the earnest look on his face. I think was what got me more. Just Caleb being just like, he's excited and he wants to just show this too. And Avery's reaction does get a little, but given the circumstances and everything, though, I don't know. Just his like eagerness to just kind of show her. That got me.
And I get it because Caleb does say, I've loved him since elementary school or whatever it was, and and it's almost like Caleb is trying to get her blessing to propose to Daniel. And I know that eventually it kind of turns a little softer from Avery's point of view, but I think Avery just has so much going on.
Oh, yeah, no, she does. She does.
With everything.
Yeah. No, but even like, Caleb, back to the earnestness thing, I mean, even when, he couldn't get balloons and confetti, but he shows up with the champagne. You can tell he's in this like such happy place, and then just to have it all, come crashing down around him. He didn't even need to see his face just to know that like, oh no, this was the wrong moment because of everything that happens. And Daniel just flat out saying, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
Like that line killed me. I was just like, oh my God. It's just, you have like that earnest little, happy, and then it just all fades into that heartbreak. And it was just very, very well acted scene, but so
Yes.
difficult to watch.
Yeah, very difficult to watch.
Yeah.
And your heart kind of, your heart breaks for Caleb because here he wants to celebrate, and
Mm-hmm.
just the way he's talking. Oh, I guess balloons and confetti are not essential, so I couldn't get them. I
Yeah.
disagree, and he's like, it's time to celebrate, and then here comes Daniel turning around, and he's so heartbroken, he's crying, and
Yeah.
he says, Matthew died. And
Yeah.
that's it. And then Caleb obviously is there to comfort him. And you got to think in Caleb's head is like, obviously I can't propose to him now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's the moment was not, it was not meant to be at that moment. But it's just seeing, just his excitement going in and then just realizing, no, it cannot be right now because of this tragic thing that has just occurred. Yeah, no, it just added, it heaped onto what you said at the beginning. This episode is, the peak of all of like the emotions that we've been feeling the entire season. It really, that this is when it all just kind of hits, comes to a head for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, we even have, the episode closing on, sort of a, crazy note, which, just, we've got the whole, with Lex and the cops and them realizing, we see like a cop listening on Pete and Lex's conversation in the office when they're trying to search out, which, it just, okay, so we have like this super intense kind of thing, and then we see another level of intense. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? They got someone listening in to this thing?
That's what I was thinking, like he's listening in. Like he's got a mask on, so we can't tell who it is. At first I thought it was Colton, then we found, because we found out Colton was placed on suspension without pay.
Right.
But then it's like, who else? Like who is dirty in the BCPD?
Right, because it just was such a sketchy sort of way to throw us into that scene. It's just like, oh, wait a minute, who's this listening in? What's he up to? What's going on? Because now we're starting to see, shades of the other Adam. We're starting to piece that puzzle together and figure all of that out alongside. I mean, when they pull up that photo and you realize that, oh, it's my twin, my evil twin. If that isn't like a soapy cliffhanger, I don't know what is.
Oh, it definitely is. You're not kidding. I mean, GH pulled it off with the whole Jason and Drew thing a number of years ago. But yeah,
Adam and Stuart Chandler. I mean, it's definitely Natalie and Janet. We've definitely got that. It's a trope, but it's a trope that I really appreciate in this sense, because you do get to see, I mean, two sides of, Christos in this. And you can tell he just has so much fun playing, playing the villain. And that's, you could see it in the previous episode, just seeing him get to play totally different, just sinister type. You could tell it's got to be fun as hell for him.
And I like how Pete kind of comes to the realization that something's up, because he finds out that there's, problems with his bank accounts and his, some of his business dealings, whatever they are.
Right.
Some accounts are closed out or frozen or what have you. And then the conversation with Lianna, where she's like, oh, I see from the mask down, you have on the table, you didn't like the mask I gave you. And he's like, what?
Yeah, it's such an interesting build. It really just, plants all these little seeds. And then when you get to the end, you're just like, oh, well, that all tracks and that makes sense, because you've got like this, Adam, we realize Sir Thomas is one of the wealthiest guys in Britain, and his son is in charge of international operations, and there's this whole Kenway Holdings thing. I mean, it's a lot of information thrown at us all at once. And it's kind of wild to me that, like, I don't know, with Sarah being as, involved with, like, well, maybe she's just, but wouldn't you think that, like, if your son, a identical twin to your child was one of these, in charge of international operations for one of these huge companies in Britain. I mean, I don't know how involved, but wouldn't you think she'd have seen a photo and just been like, Hey, what's up with that?
The one thing that really does bug me sometimes about soap operas is that sometimes they could be just in their bubble. Like
True.
Bay,
And she
like
does have a lot going on in
Bay
Bay City. Maybe she can't, look across the pond. Maybe she doesn't have too much going on in Britain. But it's just so funny to me. It's just like, that is like your son's identical. That is your son's double. That is your son's twin. That is your actual son. And just I don't know. It's just kind of funny to me as well.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. But no, I agree with you. I almost feel like, first of all, I would love to know who the other Adam was. Like,
right?
Who was the other Adam? And
why was he so invested in this whole con job thing too? Like, what made him decide? And Tobin, another big, like, what's his what is that man?
And I get it. There were cast problems, because the same thing that happened to Patricia Darbo happened to the guy that played Tobin.
Yeah.
So it kind of put a sour taste in their mouth, and yada yada yada. They had to get rid of the character, or whatever. But it's like, why, out of that. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you can ask. Like, for Tobin, wouldn't he know that this other child, this wasn't his son? Wouldn't you know what I mean? Like, all this other stuff. If you raised him, how you would know.
I mean, it's a little bit of a retcon, but it's worth it in the sense that, because let's face it, like Adam, coming in as like, the mystery, the kid, the guy with the chip on his shoulder, the wronged brother. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, it's spicier and juicier and more fun to have it be, the evil twin with like the other colored eye, who's just, this big titan, big business titan guy who just wants to, show that, even though it's like, his origin story, it's like, okay, so you're obviously successful. You're obviously, you got some, you're doing pretty well, but you still have, like, you want to go on this revenge tour now, go after, this guy who didn't even know that really you exist. It's an interesting soapy twist. And it's like, there's a little bit contrived, a little bit just kind of thrown together, but at the same time, it's satisfying to see, if only for the fact that we get to see Christos and, like, getting to, like, just play both sides of the coin and go play a crazy villain in addition to our hero. So
no, you're exactly right. I think we kind of covered everything.
I think so too.
Jam-packed episode. We go into New Year's Eve, the next episode, where all hell seems to be breaking loose.
Things definitely ramp up, but in a way that is a little bit more, not palatable, but it's just a little bit less raw. It's a little bit more just like soapy.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's like, we're gonna, just kind of throw you into the mix now with some crazy soapy drama adventure stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Which is always fun.
And that's what we will do when we come back at you next week. So remember, folks, Dockside at the Bay is not going anywhere. We will still be here every Thursday at noon Eastern on our Twitter, on our YouTube, and also on Kim's YouTube. And don't forget, folks, starting today, October 9th, we are going to be collecting for one full month for Samantha's Friends, culminating in our 24-hour podcast-a-thon taking place on Saturday, November 8th from 3 p.m. Eastern to Sunday, November 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern, where we will tally up the final amount that we will be giving to Samantha's Friends, which is an awesome charity. So definitely look out for that. Like I said, last year we raised $350. This year I'm challenging our audience, our fans, our subscribers to help us double that and raise $700.
And we can do it. I have faith.
Absolutely. So look out, watch our social media, because the QR code for Venmo will be up there, and just go ahead and send what you can. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just we will make a difference for service animals and for first responders and military veterans and multiple organizations that work with service animals. That's what Samantha's Friends helps out with. So again, look out for it. It'll be coming on our social media starting today. And I believe that's about it.
I think so too. No, I think we're good. And yeah, just in terms of platforms, if you want to chat with me about this episode of The Bay or about any, soapy related stuff, I'm Misfit8690 on Twitter /X and a Little Misfit52 on YouTube. So feel free to check me out there.
All right, fantastic. Well, and as always for me, you can check me out on Facebook and Twitter at Vinny Suds. At Suds Media is our network X account. That's where I mainly tweet from. I don't always switch back and forth. But you could also find us on Instagram and Threads, which is Suds and Squared Circle Media. On Facebook, there's also a Suds and Squared Circle Media page as well. And on TikTok, we are now at Suds_Media. So check that out because we do put up trailers and tweet teasers and reels and who knows, maybe I'll be doing something that'll be exclusive to TikTok going forward. So an eye on all of our social media. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell, and definitely like the video. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment and interact. As always, for Kim, I'm Vinny. We will see you next week as we go Dockside at the Bay. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care, everybody.